You ever have that one moment in life where you finally feel like you've made it? Yeah, this was mine. After years of renting noisy apartments and dealing with upstairs neighbors who thought 2 a.m. was a great time to practice tap dancing, I finally bought my dream home. The place looked straight out of a real estate commercial. Picture this: a cozy 2-story house with white trim, a big wooden deck, and a backyard so green it could make a golf course jealous. There was this giant oak tree in the back too, perfect spot for a hammock and some iced tea on a lazy Sunday. And the fence? Oh, that glorious fence. Tall, solid, and just enough to say, "Hey, I like you, but stay on your side." Privacy, peace, and quiet, that's all I wanted. No drama, no noise, no nonsense. The neighborhood was, well, honestly, it looked too good to be true. Streets so clean you could eat off them. Lawns trimmed with military precision. Everyone smiled like they were auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. You'd drive by, and people would wave like you were already part of the family. "Welcome to Maple Ridge Estates," one of them called as I unloaded boxes from my truck. "You're gonna love it here." And I believed them. Rookie mistake. Now, let me tell you about the HOA. For the uninitiated, that's the Homeowners Association, the mysterious council that basically runs the neighborhood. They're supposed to keep everything looking nice and uniform, whatever that means. You know, make sure no one paints their house neon green or leaves a rusty car on the lawn. Fair enough, right? But there was something off about how perfect everything looked. Like one of those small-town mystery movies where everyone smiles a little too wide. Still, I brushed it off. I was too happy unpacking boxes, setting up my grill, and imagining the weekend cookouts. I even started naming the birds that came to visit the backyard. Yeah, that's how peaceful it was. And then, of course, I met her. The HOA president. Let's call her Linda, because of course her name was Linda. Mid-50s, perfect blonde hair, always wearing pastel cardigans and pearls like she just walked off a TV commercial for home insurance. The kind of woman who called everyone sweetheart but could slice you open with her smile. She showed up on my second day there, holding a clipboard like it was a royal scepter. "Well, hello there. You must be our new neighbor," she chirped. "I'm Linda, HOA president. Just wanted to personally welcome you to our little slice of heaven." Her tone was sugar-sweet, but her eyes were scanning my yard like a home inspector on commission. "Looks like you're settling in nicely," she said, eyeing the grill I'd set up on the deck. "Oh, just a small thing. HOA guidelines recommend gas grills only. Charcoal smoke can, travel." I laughed awkwardly. "Oh, right. Yeah, sure. Didn't know that." She smiled, tight and practiced. "No worries. We all had to learn the rules once. You'll get the hang of it." Then she handed me this thick binder, the HOA handbook. I swear that thing could knock out a full-grown man if thrown correctly. "Just a little light reading," she said with a wink. "We take pride in keeping Maple Ridge beautiful." And with that, she left. I stood there for a good minute, staring at that binder, wondering what I just signed up for. I opened it up and started flipping through pages and pages of rules about fence colors, lawn heights, acceptable mailbox shapes. There was even a section about backyard decor visibility. I didn't know what that meant, but it sounded like trouble. Still, I told myself not to stress. "You're overthinking it," I said. "These are just people who care about the community." Oh, past me was so innocent. The first few weeks were perfect. I hosted a small barbecue, with the gas grill, of course. Met some nice neighbors, got a few compliments on my lawn. I even joined the neighborhood group chat, which mostly consisted of people sharing lost cat photos and bake sale reminders. For a brief moment, I thought I'd found my forever home. Every morning I'd sit on the deck, sipping coffee, listening to the birds, thinking, man, this is it. This is peace. But looking back now, I should have known the peace wouldn't last. See, Linda had this way of popping up everywhere. I'd be mowing the lawn, and boom, there she was, waving from across the street. If I watered my plants too long, she'd stroll by, casually mentioning water restrictions. Once, I swear she watched me repaint my fence just to make sure I used the approved beige. Still, I tried to stay friendly. I smiled, nodded, played along. Because in every HOA story, there's always that one person who picks a fight too early, and I didn't want to be that guy. But let me tell you, it's only a matter of time before the HOA president crosses a line. And when she did, oh, she really did. That backyard I loved so much? The one I thought was my private little paradise? Yeah. Linda had plans for it. And that's where the nightmare began. It started on a sunny Saturday morning. Birds were chirping, coffee was strong, and I was halfway through fixing a loose deckboard when I heard the unmistakable sound of children screaming. Not in the someone's hurt kind of way, more like Unleashed at Disneyland kind of way. I looked up, and there they were. 5, maybe 6 kids, running full speed through my backyard. Plastic balls flying, chalk on the patio, juice boxes on my deck rail. I blinked, thinking maybe I was seeing things. But no, they were definitely on my grass, definitely not invited, and definitely treating my flower bed like a crash zone. Then came Linda. She strolled in like she owned the place, clipboard in one hand, lemonade in the other. "Oh, good morning," she sang, like this was the most normal thing in the world. "We're just having a little playdate. Hope you don't mind." I opened my mouth, but she kept going. "The park's a bit full today, and the kids needed some space to run around. You have such a lovely open area back here, it's perfect." Perfect. That word again. I managed a polite, I didn't realize this was a community space. She smiled that same tight-lipped smile from before, the one that said, "Don't question me, sweetie." "Oh, technically, it's still HOA land on this side of the fence line, right?" she said, waving vaguely at the grass. "The property survey gets a bit fuzzy back here." "Happens all the time." Fuzzy? That was news to me. I remember pulling out my phone and opening the email with my property documents, trying to recall that little map the realtor had shown me. I was pretty sure this was all mine. The oak tree, the fence, the deck, my private paradise. But with Linda's confidence, I started second-guessing myself. Before I could even think about saying anything, she clapped her hands. "All right, kiddos. Let's play nice and stay out of Mr. O. What was your name again, sweetheart?" I sighed. "It's Mark." "Yes, Mark's flowerbed," she said with a laugh, like we were all best friends at a picnic. For the next hour, I just stood there awkwardly on my porch, sipping what was now cold coffee, watching my backyard transform into a public playground. The parents showed up, 2 folding chairs, snacks, a Bluetooth speaker playing those poppy kid songs that make your brain melt after 5 minutes. One dad waved at me. "Hey man, hope you don't mind. Linda said this was still HOA property. Great space you've got here." I forced a smile. "Yeah, great space." When the chaos finally ended, my once perfect backyard looked like it had survived a small tornado. Crushed grass, juice stains on the deck, one broken solar light. Linda came by, still smiling like this was all fine and dandy. "Thanks for being such a good sport, Mark," she said. "You're really helping keep the neighborhood spirit alive." Neighborhood spirit, huh? My spirit was definitely dying a little inside. After everyone left, I did what any normal homeowner would do. I started Googling how to tell if HOA owns your backyard. Turns out, there's no such thing as fuzzy property lines. There's a thing called survey maps, and mine clearly showed that entire area as private property. The next day, I tried bringing it up casually with my next-door neighbor, Jim. Nice guy, retired, always mowing his lawn. "Hey, Jim," I said, leaning over the fence. "Do you know if the HOA owns part of my backyard?" He chuckled. "Oh, Linda told me something like that years ago. She said some of the lots share green space, but honestly, nobody's ever checked. Easier not to argue. Easier not to argue." That phrase stuck with me. So that was the vibe around here: keep quiet, smile, and let the HOA do what it wants. I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was a one-time thing. But the next weekend, Linda was back, this time with folding tables and balloons. "Oh, just a quick community snack meet," she said cheerfully. We're trying to get the families together more often. Builds a sense of belonging, you know? Belonging? I was starting to feel like an intruder in my own backyard. This time, I didn't even try to argue. I just sat inside by the kitchen window, watching strangers stomp across my grass while Linda chatted like she was hosting a talk show. Every laugh, every shriek of joy, it all felt like an invasion, one polite smile at a time. That night, as I cleaned up bits of confetti from my deck, I realized something important. It wasn't about confusion. Linda knew what she was doing. This was a test to see if I'd say anything. To see if I'd play along like everyone else. And I did. For now. But deep down, I knew this wasn't going to stop. When someone like Linda finds a boundary she can push, she doesn't stop there. She builds a playground on it. That's how bad it had gotten. Every few days, I'd find something strange. The gate, which I always kept latched wide open. Random toys in the grass. A soccer ball wedged under my deck. Once, my patio chair was moved to the middle of the yard like someone had been sunbathing there. At first, I thought maybe the wind did it. Or some kid accidentally kicked their ball over and forgot it. You know, the kind of small-town excuses you tell yourself when you don't want to believe something shady's going on. But the third time I found my gate open, and my garden hose unrolled all the way across the lawn like someone had used it, I knew it wasn't the wind. I decided to confront Linda. She was, of course, easy to find. Like a sitcom character, she appeared right when you least wanted her to. I walked out front, and there she was, trimming her roses, smiling like she had no idea she'd just trespassed into my personal sanity. "Morning, Linda," I said, trying to keep my tone polite. "Quick question, do you, or anyone from the HOA, have access to my backyard?" She looked genuinely surprised, or at least she played it well. "Access? Oh goodness, no. Why do you ask?" "Well, my gate's been open, and there's been stuff left back there. Toys, chairs moved. I just want to make sure no one's coming in without permission." She gave a little laugh, the kind of laugh that makes you instantly regret asking. "Oh, that. I think the kids have been using the green buffer zone again." "The what now?" I blinked. "The shared green buffer zone," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "It's technically community property. The HOA maintains it as an open-use area between homes. That's probably why your gate isn't locked access and all." I stared at her. "Linda, that's my backyard." "Well, it's adjacent to your backyard," she corrected gently, tapping her clipboard like a lawyer in pearls. "We've had some confusion about where the line falls, but I believe that section of grass is still part of the shared buffer. You know, to preserve the open feel of the neighborhood." I could feel my jaw clenching. "So, you're saying my deck, my fence, and the yard I mow every week aren't actually mine?" "Oh, don't take it so personally, Mark," she said with a pitying smile. "These things get mixed up all the time. The original development plans were kind of unclear." "Unclear?" "Sure." That night, I pulled out every bit of paperwork I had: the deed, the survey map, the closing documents. I even found that folded little plot map my realtor had shown me on day one. I laid it all out on the dining table like I was building a crime board. And there it was, in black and white. The property line ran right along the inside of my fence. Every inch of that backyard, the oak tree, the deck, the patch of grass where Linda's playdate had turned into a full-blown carnival, was mine. No buffer zone. No gray area. It was clear as day. The next morning, I decided I was done being polite. I walked straight over to Linda's house. She answered the door wearing a sun hat and holding a watering can, like she'd just stepped out of a gardening magazine. "Morning again," I said flatly. "Just wanted to clear up that little buffer zone thing. I checked my deed. It's private property, my property." She paused, then gave me that same sweet smile I was starting to hate. "Oh, I see. Well, the HOA's version of the community layout shows something different. I'd be happy to show you our map." And she did. She actually went inside, came back out with a printed HOA community boundary map, complete with colorful sections and dotted lines, and handed it to me. Only, something was off. My lot looked smaller. The fence line wasn't even on the map. And that whole patch of green behind my house was labeled Common Recreation Buffer. I stared at it for a long second, my heart pounding. "This isn't the same map that came with my deed," I said slowly. "Oh, well, this one's been updated for HOA management purposes," she replied casually. "You know, streamlined for record keeping." Updated. Right. By who, though? I didn't say another word. I just walked back home, clutching that fake-looking map like evidence. Inside, I compared it to my official property documents again. The measurements didn't match, not even close. That's when it hit me, Linda wasn't confused. She was manipulating the boundaries. Whether she redrew the maps herself or had someone adjust them for HOA use, I didn't know yet. But I knew one thing: she was trying to take control of my yard. And the worst part? The neighbors believed her. When I brought it up in the group chat, someone actually replied, "Oh yeah, Linda mentioned that buffer thing. Didn't know it was your yard." That's when the shock turned into something else: righteous anger. This wasn't about a misunderstanding anymore. It was about control. Linda wanted to blur the lines, literally, so she could do whatever she pleased. But she picked the wrong homeowner to mess with. I decided right then, the next move was mine. It started with a letter. A plain white envelope sitting in my mailbox, stamped with that smug little HOA logo, a tree inside a perfect circle. I figured it was the usual community bulletin, maybe a newsletter about pet leash reminders or upcoming bake sales. Nope. Inside was a formal notice of non-compliance. Apparently, my fence, the same one that had been standing long before I even bought the house, was now unapproved. The letter said it didn't meet community height and color standards, and that I had 14 days to submit a modification request or face penalties. Penalties. For a fence that came with the property. At first, I laughed. I actually laughed out loud, thinking it had to be some kind of mix-up. But as I read further, it got worse. The notice also mentioned my garden decor, specifically, a small stone fountain I'd installed near the oak tree. Apparently, it disrupted the visual harmony of shared buffer spaces. Shared buffer spaces. There it was again, Linda's favorite phrase. I called the HOA office right away. The office, by the way, was really just a small corner room in Linda's house. Guess who picked up? Maple Ridge Estates. "This is Linda speaking," she answered in that chipper tone that made my blood pressure rise on command. "Hey, Linda. I got a letter about fence violations? And something about my garden fountain?" "Oh, yes," she said, as if we were discussing the weather. "We've had a few updates to the community design standards. Nothing personal, of course. Just a few minor adjustments." "Adjustments?" I asked. "You're saying the community changed the rules after I moved in?" "Well," she said with a little hum, "technically, the community voted on updated boundaries and design guidelines during last quarter's meeting." "You should have received the notice." "I didn't get any notice," I said flatly. "Oh, really?" she replied, feigning surprise. "That's odd. Maybe it got lost in the mail." Lost in the mail. Right. Along with my sanity. I decided to check the so-called meeting minutes, which were supposedly public records. They were posted in the HOA's online portal, which, by the way, looked like it hadn't been updated since 2005. I found the document, skimmed through it, and there it was, a brief line that said, "Motion passed, adjustments to boundary lines and landscaping uniformity guidelines, effective immediately." No signatures. No vote count. No list of attendees. Just that one vague line. And the kicker? The date on the document was 2 weeks before I'd even moved in. That night, I went for a walk around the neighborhood. I figured maybe other homeowners were getting these letters too. But when I casually asked around, I got the same response over and over. "Oh yeah, Linda's real particular about that stuff." Best to just go along with it. Yeah, don't make waves, man. She runs the show. She means well, just play nice. Play nice. I was starting to hate that phrase. Apparently, everyone else had just accepted the HOA's rules without question. Nobody wanted the drama. Nobody wanted to be the one who challenged Linda. Well, guess what? I wasn't nobody. The next morning, I found another envelope on my doorstep. Not in the mailbox this time, literally on the doormat. This one was labeled Second Notice. The letter claimed I'd ignored prior warnings and was now in violation of Section 5B, unauthorized modifications on shared property. At the bottom was a note in cursive handwriting, Linda's handwriting. Please cooperate, Mark. The community works better when we're all on the same team. Red heart. I could practically hear her voice through the ink. That was the moment the frustration hit full throttle. It wasn't just the lies, it was how calm she was about it. How sure she was that I'd cave. She was trying to gaslight me into believing I was the problem. So I did what any rational person on the edge would do. I started documenting everything. Photos, dates, screenshots, copies of the real property map. I even took pictures of the non-compliance letter next to my untouched, regulation height fence. I wanted proof, because I could see where this was heading. Linda wasn't stopping until I either obeyed or broke down. A few days later, I caught her standing by my fence again. Clipboard, phone in hand, snapping pictures like a property appraiser. Hey! I called out, walking toward her. What are you doing on my side of the fence? She turned, smiling sweetly. Just verifying the measurements for the next board review. Nothing to worry about. Actually, I said, there's a lot to worry about. My fence is compliant, and my property hasn't changed. The only thing that's different is your map. Her smile faltered for a second, just long enough for me to see the truth under it. She knew I was right. Then she recovered, her tone sugary again. Well, I suppose you can always appeal it at the next meeting. When's that? I asked. She smiled wider. Oh, the date's still pending. I'll let you know. Of course it was. That night, I sat on my deck staring out over the yard, the oak tree swaying in the wind. What was once my peaceful little escape now felt like a battlefield. Every shadow, every creak in the fence, felt like a reminder that someone was trying to take what was mine not by force, but by paperwork. And that's when I realized, this wasn't just an HOA issue anymore. This was personal. You know that feeling when you think, it can't possibly get worse, and then life immediately says, challenge accepted? Yeah, that was me at Chapter 5. It was a Friday evening. I'd had one of those long, soul-sucking days at work, the kind where all you want is to kick off your shoes, throw some burgers on the grill, and forget the world exists. As I pulled into my driveway, something felt off. Music. Laughter. The faint smell of grilled meat floating through the air. At first, I thought a neighbor was hosting a party. But the sound wasn't coming from next door. It was coming from behind my house. My backyard. I walked around the side, and sure enough, there it was. Tables. Balloons. A bounce house. People, lots of people, in my yard. Kids running across the grass, women chatting near my deck, someone flipping burgers on my grill. For a second, I just stood there, too stunned to process it. Then I saw the banner. Maple Ridge Community Family Day. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. I marched toward the deck, weaving between folding chairs and half-eaten cupcakes, trying not to lose it in front of the children. That's when I saw her, of course, Linda. She was standing by the grill, holding a spatula like the Queen of Suburbia. Perfect pastel outfit, smile locked in place. Linda! I said sharply. She turned, her eyes lighting up like she was thrilled to see me. Oh, Mark! You made it! We were just about to start the games. The games? I repeated, barely containing myself. What are you doing in my yard? Her smile didn't budge an inch. Oh, didn't you get the email? or hosting the HOA's family day here. It was the perfect location, so spacious, so welcoming. I never gave permission for this. I snapped. She blinked, feigning confusion. Oh, no, we got temporary approval. It's all on file. Temporary approval? From who? Well, she glanced at her clipboard, pretending to read something. Technically, the HOA board approved it during an emergency session. And since you didn't respond to the notice, it was assumed you consented. Assumed I consented. I took a deep breath, trying not to explode in front of an audience. Linda, you can't just assume people's consent to use their private property. That's when a couple of the neighbors turned to look. I could feel eyes on me, the kind of looks that said, "Why is he being difficult?" One guy holding his soda chuckled awkwardly. "Hey man, it's just one afternoon. Chill out. The kids are having fun." Yeah, another woman added, "It's for the community. Don't be that guy." That guy. The crazy homeowner who doesn't get the HOA's spirit of togetherness. I felt this weird sinking feeling, that mix of rage and embarrassment that makes your stomach twist. Linda stepped closer, lowering her voice but keeping that fake smile plastered on. "Mark, I really wish you'd check your email more often. You wouldn't want to come off as unneighborly." Something inside me snapped. Unneighborly? I said, my voice shaking. You broke into my yard. You used my grill. You're literally hosting a party on my property without permission, and you're calling me unneighborly? Her smile finally cracked. Just a flicker, but I saw it. That flash of annoyance under the mask. Technically, she said tightly, the community voted years ago that this section was part of the open use area. Technically, I shot back, that's a lie. I have the deed. The survey. Everything. That got everyone's attention. The music quieted. Conversation stopped. I could feel 20 pairs of eyes staring at me like I'd just cursed at a school assembly. Linda sighed dramatically, then turned to the crowd. "It's fine, everyone," she said sweetly. "Let's just enjoy the afternoon." Mark's still adjusting to the community guidelines. That was it. That one sentence turned me into the problem. I stood there, fuming, watching her glide back to the grill like she hadn't just hijacked my backyard. The neighbors avoided my eyes, whispering among themselves. I heard someone say, "He's really uptight about property lines," followed by a soft laugh. It felt like the whole world had turned upside down. This was my home. My peace. My safe space. And somehow, Linda had turned it into her personal event venue and made me look like the villain for objecting. I ended up retreating inside, slamming the door a little harder than I meant to. From the kitchen window, I watched the party carry on like nothing happened. Kids bouncing, people laughing, Linda waving at passers-by like a proud host. When the sun started to set, they finally packed up. Leftover paper plates on my deck. Empty soda cans in my flower bed. A melted popsicle stuck to my chair. I walked out there, surrounded by the aftermath, and for the first time since moving in, I felt defeated. Not angry. Not indignant. Just defeated. Because no matter how right I was, it didn't matter. In the court of suburban opinion, Linda was untouchable. She had the neighbors, the rules, and the community spirit on her side. And me? I was just the guy with a deed and no one willing to listen. But as I stood there under the oak tree, surrounded by the mess she left behind, I made myself a quiet promise. This wasn't over. After the family day fiasco, something in me flipped. I went from frustrated homeowner to full-blown detective. No more letting things slide. No more polite nods or awkward smiles. Linda had crossed the line, literally, and I was done playing defense. The morning after the party, I was out in the yard cleaning up paper plates and half-deflated balloons when my next-door neighbor, Jim, wandered over. He gave me this awkward half-smile, the kind people wear when they know something they shouldn't. "Rough night, huh?" he said, scratching his head. "Yeah," I muttered, tossing a soggy napkin into a trash bag. Didn't realize my private yard came with free community access. Jim chuckled nervously. Yeah, about that. Don't take it too hard. Linda's just trying to make things look good for the inspection. I froze. Inspection? He instantly looked like he regretted saying it. Yeah. You didn't hear that from me, okay? HOA's been getting ready for the regional review thing, the one that affects property value ratings. Linda said she needed your yard for the photos. I just stared at him. Wait, photos? He shrugged. Something about the park area being under renovation. She said your backyard made the neighborhood look more, community friendly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Linda had basically staged my backyard like a movie set to make the neighborhood look better for some inspection or assessment. And she hadn't just borrowed it, she'd claimed it. Lied about it being shared property so she could use it to boost the HOA's image. Suddenly, all her weird behavior made sense. The fake rule violations. The buffer zone nonsense. The desperate insistence that it was still HOA land. This wasn't about rules, it was about reputation and money. I went inside and opened my laptop. If Linda was using my yard to boost the community's property rating, there had to be a paper trail somewhere. Hours of digging later, I found it buried in the HOA's public filings. A document labeled Maple Ridge Beautification Initiative, Phase 2. Right there in the project summary, it said, temporary extension of communal space boundaries for inspection and appraisal purposes, to enhance curb appeal and property ranking. Temporary extension. Except there were no signatures. No owner permissions. Just a neatly typed note at the bottom. Approved by HOA President L. Whitmore. Linda had literally signed off on expanding the HOA's boundaries onto my land without telling anyone. I couldn't decide whether to laugh or scream. To make sure I wasn't losing my mind, I called the county records office the next morning. I gave them my address, asked for the official plot map and property history. The clerk on the phone was nice, if a bit slow. After a few minutes of clicking and typing, she said, "Yep, looks like your parcel boundaries have been the same since 2009. Full private lot. No HOA overlays, no shared zones." Are you sure? I asked. Because my HOA president claims part of it's a green buffer. She laughed. Nope. There's no buffer zone on file. If they're saying that, they're wrong or they're lying. Bingo. I thanked her, printed out every map and record I could find, and started building what I jokingly called the Linda file, a fat folder full of every fake claim, every photo, every copy of her bogus letters. The more I dug, the clearer the pattern became. Linda had been using my backyard, and probably others, to make the HOA look pristine for outside eyes. The family day event? A photo op. The playdates? Staged community activity. The rule updates? A smokescreen to cover the land grab. And the wildest part? In one of the older HOA newsletters, buried in a paragraph about enhancement zones, I found a line that made my jaw drop. By expanding visual access to adjoining properties, we maintain the neighborhood's open aesthetic and increase property desirability. Visual access. She'd literally used my backyard as a scenic backdrop for everyone else's home values. By the time I finished reading, my initial anger had burned away into something sharper, determination. This wasn't just petty power tripping anymore. It was deception, maybe even fraud. And I finally had proof. That evening, I decided to test the waters. I caught Linda as she was leaving her house, phone in one hand, clipboard in the other, the suburban queen making her royal rounds. "Evening, Linda," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I've been looking into the whole shared buffer situation. Funny thing, the county doesn't seem to agree with you." Her eyes flickered. Just a split second, but it was there, the tiny flash of panic before she composed herself. "Oh, well," she said smoothly, "records can be outdated. We use the HOA's updated maps." "Yeah," I said, smiling, "I've seen those. The ones you approved yourself." Her smile faltered again. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding," she said lightly. "You know how paperwork can get mixed up." I took a step closer. "Not this time. I've got the documents. The real ones. And unless you want to explain to the county why your maps don't match the official records, I'd suggest you stop stepping foot on my property." For the first time since I'd moved in, Linda didn't have a comeback. She just stared at me, her jaw tight, before mumbling, "I'll look into it." Then she walked away fast. As I watched her go, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: control. For the first time, I wasn't the confused newcomer or the isolated neighbor. I was the guy with the truth. And Linda? She knew it. After finding the records and watching Linda walk away that night, I did the thing every drama-loving part of me wanted to avoid. I got methodical. No yelling. No flashy moves. Just slow, steady work. Like a chess player setting up the board. First step: evidence. If this was going to be a war of paperwork and public opinion, I needed receipts. Not the small kind you fold up in your pocket, but the big kind: photos, timestamps, videos. I ordered a couple of weatherproof security cameras that hooked to my phone. One pointed at the gate, another at the side path, and a smaller one tucked under the deck where people always left toys. I mounted them on the sly, late at night, when no one was around to notice me fiddling with screws. The first week was boring. Motion alerts at 3 a.m. for neighborhood cats. A mail carrier dropping off a package. But then, like clockwork, there were footsteps. Early Saturday, a notification lit up my phone: movement by the fence. I watched the footage with my coffee in hand and my heart doing this weird little march. There she was, Linda, clipboard, polite smile, stepping through my gate like it was her living room. She walked the yard, took pictures of my deck, and left without closing the gate. The clip had a timestamp, clear as day. I saved it. I saved the next one. And the next. The more I watched, the more patterns appeared. Playdate setups at odd hours. Chairs moved in the dark. Someone dropping off a stack of event flyers on my porch. Each clip got labeled and backed up to the cloud. I made a folder called Evidence and another called Timeline. They felt silly to name, but they kept me organized and oddly calm. Parallel to the cameras, I started building a paper trail. I printed my deed, my survey, the county maps, the HOA's beautification doc with Linda's signature. I highlighted the exact property lines and measured them against the HOA map that lied. I photocopied meeting minutes, emails, and the non-compliance notices she'd sent. Everything went into a thick binder, neat, tabbed, impossible to ignore. I also wrote down notes. Dates. Times. What was said when I confronted her. Who was present at which event. Small details matter. I kept the notes short, factual, no drama. Just the facts. If I wanted to win in a legal or civic way, I couldn't be the emotional homeowner yelling in forums. I had to be the guy with the receipts. Then I called a lawyer. I didn't storm into a law office like a video showman. I picked one with clear reviews about HOA disputes, made a short call, and scheduled a consult. The lawyer listened, asked precise questions, and didn't sound surprised, which, honestly, comforted me. We discussed trespass, falsified HOA documents, and possible injunctive relief to keep people off my property. I left the meeting feeling focused instead of frantic. I also emailed the county records office what I'd found. No threats, just documents attached and a short message asking them to confirm the official plot lines. That way there'd be a neutral, third-party note on file. I printed that email too, just to have everything in one place. Neighbors are tricky. Most will stay quiet until a fire gets hot. I didn't want to blow up relationships, so I stayed polite. I waved, mowed my lawn, brought muffins to a few porches. Smiles are a kind of camouflage. You keep being the reasonable person while you stack the deck in your favor. When someone asked about the HOA stuff, I kept it light: weird mix-up, right? I'm sorting it out. No accusations. No gossip. Just a calm line that didn't give away the work happening behind the scenes. At night, I reviewed footage and rearranged strategy like a general moving pawns. If Linda showed up taking photos, I'd document it and then send a polite but firm email to the HOA archive. Please note an unauthorized presence on private property on date time. If a neighbor left toys, I'd photograph them and write the time. If a flyer was taped to my fence, I kept the flyer, took a photo, and logged it. Small actions, consistent record keeping. There were moments of low-grade tension. I walked by the fence and caught her watching from across the street. She'd smile, and I'd smile back, calm, unflappable. The smile was my armor. Inside, I felt a quiet pressure building, but it wasn't fear. It was focus. Every small victory, a clear video clip, a confirmed county email, a lawyer's nod added to that focus. I started imagining how I'd lay it out, the binder on the lawyer's desk, the timeline printed for a mediator, the clips queued for a hearing. The plan wasn't about revenge in the hot, dramatic sense. It was about correction. Fixing what was broken. Making sure no one could trample my rights while smiling like a neighborly saint. So I waited. Quietly. Calmly. My backyard stayed the same lush green by day, betrayed only by the tiny cameras hidden in plain sight. And underneath that quiet, I was building something big, not loud, not flashy, just solid and inevitable. When it was time to move, I'd know exactly how to do it. This was the silent preparation. The calm before the storm. Only my storm wouldn't be messy or cruel. It would be precise. Rational. Unavoidable. This was the moment I'd been gearing up for. All the cameras. All the maps. The binder that felt heavier every time I added a page. It was time to stop collecting proof and start using it. First step, the cease and desist. My lawyer wrote it short, crisp, no theatrics. It said, in plain language, that the HOA and its agents were trespassing on private property, that they had no authority to expand community boundaries without owner consent, and that continuing to use my yard would result in immediate legal action. The letter included dates, timestamps, and references to the county records proving my lot lines. It closed with a clear demand: stop all activity on the property and respond within 7 days. I didn't want to hand deliver it in a rage. That felt juvenile. So my lawyer sent it to the HOA's listed address and to Linda's email. I also sent a copy to the county records office and the local code enforcement department. I wanted the whole thing on official paper, where words mattered and not gossip. Within 24 hours, my phone started buzzing. First, a message from one of the HOA board members, the one who always smiled and never asked questions. "Got your letter," it said. "We're looking into it." Polite. Passive. The kind of response people use when they know something ugly is coming. Then Linda called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was crocodile sweet. "Oh, Mark, I just got your lawyer's note. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. Why don't we meet over coffee tomorrow and talk it out? No need for the county and lawyers, right? We can resolve this like neighbors." Her tone tried for warmth. Her words tried for guilt trip. I deleted the message. Then I called my lawyer. "She wants to meet," I said. "What do you think?" He didn't hesitate. "Don't meet alone. If you meet, bring the lawyer or have a note-taker. Anything she says could be used later." Good call. Linda tried the charm offensive for a few days. Friendly texts. Small favors. A casserole left at my door with a note, "Let's be neighbors." All of it felt staged. All of it felt like damage control. Then the real panic started. The HOA posted a short, awkward statement on the community portal. It read like someone trying to sound neutral while covering their tracks. "We are aware of a boundary concern raised by a homeowner and are reviewing our records." That was it. No details. No dates. No responsibility. But the tone had shifted. When the calmest statement is defensive, you know someone's scrambling. My lawyer also heard back from the county. They opened a quick inquiry after seeing the documents I'd filed. That was important. A neutral government office was now involved. It meant the HOA couldn't simply sweep things under the rug with polite smiles and backyard parties. Linda escalated next, but not in the way I expected. She messaged the board privately, asking if they could resolve things without attracting attention. She wanted a private meeting. She wanted to hush it up. Her note sounded urgent, like someone trying to patch a leak before guests noticed the water. That made her panic obvious. Panic looks like small moves and secrecy. When people are confident, they don't hiss behind closed doors. The day before the deadline on the cease and desist, she showed up at my fence. I was ready. I had the binder on the porch, the laptop open to the video clips, a calm face and a cooler of iced tea. She came alone, hands folded, trying the same smile that had ruled the neighborhood for months. "Mark," she said, voice soft. "We really should talk. I can get the board to rescind the notices if you just..." "Don't," I said, cutting her off. My voice was quiet but steady. "I didn't raise it. No private deals. No secret rescinds. Everything goes through the board and the county now." She blinked. "But we can fix this quietly. No need to involve attorneys. You'll just make things awkward." "I already involved attorneys," I replied. "I've been patient. I tried to be neighborly. You used my property, doctored maps, and sent me fake compliance notices. This isn't awkward for me. It's a violation. I want it fixed officially." That was the line. I quoted rental law jargon like I'd swallowed a law textbook, not to be a show-off, but to show I knew my rights. Trespass. Fraudulent representation. Unauthorized use. I kept it clear. I kept it short. She tried one last softener. "People are worried you'll make them choose sides." "Let them," I said. "I'm not asking anyone to choose. I'm asking for what's mine." When the 7 days passed, the HOA had not only responded, they tried a partial retreat. They withdrew the updated maps and suspended any events pending the county review. Not a full apology. Not a correction. But it was a crack in their armor. The neighbors noticed. Conversations started to sound different. People who had once said play nice now asked questions. The group chat had a few messages like, "Anyone else find this weird, and has Linda always handled things this way?" That was all I needed. Once the doubt spreads, the facade gets brittle. Walking my yard that evening felt different. The grass still had the marks of past parties. The toy left from months ago was still tucked under the deck. But the air felt lighter. I felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, I slept without replaying conversations in my head. I wasn't done. There would be hearings, probably a mediation, maybe even a lawsuit. But the power had shifted. The legal hammer had landed. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about putting things back where they belonged. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled and meant it. You ever walk into a room and feel the temperature drop, not because it's cold, but because everyone knows something's about to go down? That was the HOA meeting that night. They usually held them in the clubhouse, a cozy room with bad coffee, folding chairs, and that fake neighborhood unity banner still hanging from last year's community picnic. But this time, the air felt heavy. People weren't chatting about lawn care or recycling bins. They were whispering. And every whisper stopped when I walked in with a thick binder under my arm. Linda was already there, sitting at the front beside the board, perfectly dressed, smiling like she had everything under control. But I could tell from the twitch in her jaw that she'd read the cease and desist letter a dozen times over. She looked like a queen trying to pretend the castle wasn't on fire. I took a seat near the front. Calm. No drama. I wasn't here to yell, I was here to show. The meeting started normally enough. Budget talk. Landscaping updates. A quick mention of minor community concerns. Then came the part I'd been waiting for: open floor comments. I raised my hand. I have a few things to share, I said, standing up. You could feel the tension spike. Linda's eyes flicked toward me, but I kept my tone cool and even. I walked to the front, placed the binder on the table, and clicked the remote connected to the projector. Over the last 2 months, I've had several unauthorized entries onto my property by HOA members, including the president. I've documented everything. The first slide showed a time-stamped photo, Linda, in my backyard, clipboard in hand. Gasps rippled through the room. Click. Next slide, the beautification document, her signature approving an extension of HOA boundaries into my lot. Click. Then the county map, official stamp and all, proving my property lines had never changed. Click. A short clip played, her stepping through my unlocked gate, taking pictures of my deck. When the video ended, silence. You could have heard a pin drop. I've already spoken to my attorney in the county, I continued. The property is private. The HOA had no legal right to use or claim it. And these documents, I tapped the binder, show deliberate misrepresentation of property boundaries. Someone in the back muttered, "Oh, wow." Another whispered, "That's not okay." Linda tried to smile, but it came out crooked. "Mark, we could have talked about this privately." I turned to her. "You had months to talk. You chose to lie. Now we're doing this properly." That line landed like a hammer. Then I opened the binder and passed copies of the documents to the other board members. Everything's printed and dated. Emails, photos, video logs. I'm happy to provide copies to anyone here who wants transparency. That word transparency flipped the mood in the room. People who'd been silent started leaning forward. One of the younger board members, a guy named Rob, adjusted his glasses and said, "Linda, this isn't the first complaint about overreach, is it?" Linda looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "We were simply maintaining community standards." "By walking into someone's yard without permission?" Rob pressed. A few neighbors started nodding. Someone said, "Yeah, she came into my garden last spring for that inspection thing." Another added, "She told me our property lines were changing too." And just like that, the dam broke. The whispers turned into questions, and the questions turned into accusations. Every polite mask cracked open at once. The people who'd smiled at her for years were suddenly remembering every odd rule, every mandatory meeting, every unexplained fee. Linda tried to regain control, her voice went from soft to sharp. "This is all being twisted. Everything we did was in the interest of the community. By lying on county records?" I said quietly. The room erupted again. Rob called for order, but it was chaos. Neighbors demanded audits. One board member resigned on the spot, literally took off her name tag, muttered, "I'm not going down for this," and walked out. Another mumbled something about needing to review the bylaws and practically ran for the exit. Linda sat frozen, clutching her papers, color draining from her face. When the noise finally died down, Rob cleared his throat. "Given the evidence presented," he said carefully, "I move that we temporarily suspend the president from her duties pending investigation." The motion passed unanimously. Even her remaining friend on the board didn't defend her. It was over. Not in a fireworks kind of way, more like the air going out of a balloon. Quiet, inevitable, complete. Linda gathered her things, stood up, and walked out without a word. Nobody stopped her. Nobody followed. When the meeting ended, people came up to me, some apologizing for doubting me, others thanking me for speaking up. The same folks who once told me to play nice were now saying things like, "We needed someone to finally say it." I didn't gloat. Didn't need to. The proof had spoken louder than I ever could. As I walked home that night, the neighborhood looked different. Same houses. Same lawns. But for the first time, it felt like mine again, like I actually belonged there, not as someone being tolerated, but as someone respected. And somewhere in the quiet dark behind those fences, I swear I could almost hear the sound of a throne falling. A week after the explosive HOA meeting, the neighborhood felt different. Quieter. Lighter. Like the air had been cleared after a long, suffocating storm. For once, my mornings didn't start with anxiety about finding strangers in my backyard. I'd open my curtains, sip my coffee, and just enjoy the silence. But the story wasn't done yet, not until the paperwork caught up with justice. 3 days later, I got an email from the new acting HOA chair, Rob, the same board member who'd pushed to suspend Linda. His message was short, formal, and to the point. Following the recent investigation, the HOA board has concluded that former President L. Whitmore violated several bylaws, including misuse of authority and unauthorized modification of property boundaries. Effective immediately, she has been removed from her position and fined for breach of HOA regulations. Attached was a PDF titled Resolution 17B, Misuse of Authority, Official Disciplinary Action. I opened it like someone unwrapping a long-awaited present. There it was in black and white, the HOA confirming what I'd been saying all along. My property was private. The map was falsified. Linda had overstepped her authority. The fine they hit her with wasn't small either, several $1,000s, enough to sting. The best part? It mentioned additional restitution owed to the affected homeowner. That homeowner, of course, was me. I won't lie, I might have done a small victory dance in my kitchen. Later that afternoon, Rob called me personally. "We've also agreed to issue you an official letter reinstating your property rights," he said. "And Linda's agreed to sign a written apology." "Wait, she agreed?" I asked. He chuckled awkwardly. "Well, agreed after we made it clear the alternative was a public hearing with the county involved." Poetic justice, served cold and professional. 2 days later, the letter arrived, a neatly folded piece of paper in an HOA envelope. It had the official letterhead, signatures, and everything. But it was the handwritten note at the bottom that got me. In slanted cursive, Linda had written, "I sincerely regret any misunderstanding or overstep that occurred regarding your property. I take full responsibility and wish you well moving forward." Sure, it was probably written through gritted teeth, but I didn't care. The point was, she signed it. And just like that, the fence between my yard and the world didn't feel like a line of conflict anymore. It felt like a boundary of victory. Over the next week, I got to work rebuilding it properly, this time taller, sturdier, and with one small but satisfying addition, a crisp white sign that read "Private Property, No Trespassing." I remember stepping back and admiring it in the late afternoon sun. It wasn't just wood and nails anymore. It was a declaration. A line of peace. Neighbors passed by and waved. Some even stopped to chat, the same ones who once gave me nervous smiles now gave genuine ones. "Glad you stood up," one said. We all felt something was off, but no one wanted to be the first to say it. That felt good. Not in an ego way, but in a restored balance kind of way. Even the HOA started cleaning up its act. The new board announced open transparency rules, published all meeting notes online, and even formed a property rights review committee to ensure what happened to me never happened again. Imagine that, they turned my nightmare into their new standard of fairness. As for Linda, she quietly sold her house a few months later. Word around the block was she needed a change of scenery. Sure. Maybe scenery without fences she couldn't cross. The day her moving truck pulled away, I was out back grilling burgers, the same yard she once claimed was a shared buffer zone. I raised my spatula like a toast and whispered, "Guess it's my turn to host the neighborhood barbecue." Yeah, that one was just for me. What surprised me most was how calm I felt through it all. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted restoration, and I got it. The yard that once felt like a battleground was peaceful again. The grass had grown back, the deck looked inviting, and the only people in my yard were the ones I invited there. Sometimes justice doesn't show up in a dramatic courtroom showdown or a viral video moment. Sometimes it's just a letter in your mailbox, a signed apology, and the sweet sound of quiet that follows. Looking out over my fence that evening, I realized something simple but powerful: boundaries aren't just about land, they're about respect. And once you reclaim them, you don't just win property rights. You win peace. I leaned back in my chair, watching the last bit of sunset hit my new sign, and thought. Let them call it just a fence. For me, it's the line between who I was before this mess, and who I became after. And with that, the chapter and the war finally closed. 6 quiet months passed. No more surprise parties in my backyard. No friendly inspections. No HOA notices taped to my front door at dawn. For the first time in years, peace wasn't something I had to fight for, it was just there. The lawn grew green again. The fence stood tall, proud, and unchallenged. My mornings were marked by birdsong instead of bickering. The air had the stillness of hard-won freedom. I'd even started to forget the constant weight of conflict. Until one afternoon, a white envelope appeared in my mailbox, the same crisp stationery I'd learned to dread. Only this time, the handwriting on the front was delicate, almost shaky. From Linda Whitmore. For a moment, I just stared at it. Part of me wanted to toss it in the trash unopened. Another part, the curious, human part, told me to read it. So I sat down at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd once spread out legal documents and photos as battle plans, and carefully tore it open. Inside was a short letter, handwritten, not printed. No HOA letterhead, no legal jargon. Just Linda's words. Dear, your name. I wanted to reach out, not as an HOA president, but as a neighbor. Time and perspective have a way of humbling a person. I realize now how far I overstepped, and how much damage I caused in my need for control. I truly believed I was doing what was best for the neighborhood, but I see now that I let power cloud my judgment. I've since moved to another town. It's quieter here, and I understand now what you must have been trying to protect all along. Your peace. Your space. Your right to just be. I hope your yard feels like home again. Sincerely, Linda. I sat there for a long time, just reading the letter over and over. No excuses, no veiled barbs, just genuine remorse. Maybe too late, but real. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just closure. The kind that comes when the war is over and both sides finally see the battlefield for what it was, unnecessary. I folded the letter back up and placed it in my drawer. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Peace is something you fight for once, but protect forever. A few weeks later, a notice appeared on the neighborhood bulletin board. Apparently, the HOA had elected a new president, a man named Gregory Hale. New name, new face. Same crisp polo shirts and overconfident smile. He knocked on my door one morning, clipboard in hand. Good morning. Just introducing myself as the new HOA president. We're trying to maintain consistency around here, and I noticed your fence. I cut him off with a polite but firm smile. It's within height regulations, confirmed in writing by the board last year. You'll find a copy in the HOA records. His smile faltered for a second, then came back tighter. Ah, right. Good to know. We just like to keep everyone cooperative. Of course, I said. And I like to keep everyone on the right side of my property line. He blinked, nodded awkwardly, and stepped back. Well then, good day. As he walked off, clipboard pressed nervously against his chest, I couldn't help but chuckle. Different face. Same game. But this time, I knew every rule and every loophole. That night, I sat out on my deck under the string lights, sipping coffee and looking over my yard. The same space that had once been invaded now felt sacred again. Maybe there will always be another Gregory or Linda out there, someone who confuses authority with ownership, who thinks leadership means control. But I've learned the difference between fighting out of anger and standing out of principle. Now, I don't need to shout to be heard. I just stand my ground, quietly, confidently. And that, I've learned, is the most powerful statement you can make. A few days later, as I was watering my plants, I saw something that made me smile, a new neighbor moving in across the street. Young couple, just starting out. I overheard Gregory introducing himself, giving his friendly reminder about HOA landscaping rules. The couple smiled politely, nodded, and then looked across the street at me. I raised my mug in a casual wave. They grinned. Somehow, I had a feeling they'd find their voice, too. Maybe that's the twist, I thought. Not that the story repeats, but that each time it does, someone new learns how to stop it sooner. The cycle doesn't have to continue forever. Sometimes it just takes one person to draw a line and mean it. As the sun dipped low and the light caught on the silver private property sign at the edge of my fence, I whispered to myself. Lesson learned. Fence standing. Peace intact. And somewhere out there, maybe Linda was watching her own sunset, finally understanding what I'd been fighting for all along. Not revenge. Not victory. Just the simple right to call something mine and to keep it that way. You know what's funny? When I first moved into this neighborhood, I thought HOA meant harmony, order, and accountability. Turns out, it can also mean headaches, overreach, and arrogance, depending on who's holding the clipboard. Looking back now, I realize this whole saga wasn't really about fences or barbecues or fake violations. It was about boundaries, not just the physical kind marked by wooden posts, but the invisible kind that separate respect from control, leadership from domination. When the HOA president first crossed into my yard, I thought it was just a misunderstanding. A mix-up in property lines. But the truth is, people like that rarely stop at one small overstep. They test your reaction first, see how far they can push before you push back. And if you stay quiet too long, they start believing your silence is permission. That's how good people lose their peace inch by inch, rule by rule, until the space that's supposed to be yours doesn't feel like yours anymore. I won't lie, there were moments I wanted to just give up. Sign whatever they wanted. Smile, wave, pretend everything was fine. But here's the thing, the moment you trade your peace for someone else's comfort, you lose more than just your backyard. You lose your self-respect. And getting that back? That takes a lot more than replacing a fence panel. The biggest lesson I learned through all this? Documentation is power. You can't out-yell a manipulator. You can't out-gossip a liar. But you can outsmart them with facts, with patience, and with proof. When I stopped reacting emotionally and started acting strategically, keeping records, printing deeds, filming trespasses, the whole game changed. The HOA couldn't gaslight me anymore because I had receipts. Literal ones. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. But it was effective. And let's be real, not every fight has to end in fireworks. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is just living peacefully on land that's finally, officially, yours, while the people who tried to take it from you have to drive past every day and see what they lost. That's the kind of justice no court paper can describe. If you're watching this and you've ever dealt with an overreaching HOA, a nosy neighbor, or just someone who doesn't understand the word no, hear me out. Stand your ground, but do it smartly. Don't stoop to their level. Don't let anger drive your choices. Use your head, not just your voice. Learn your local laws, know your property lines, and keep your cool. Because when you stay calm, the truth echoes louder. This story started with me just wanting a quiet backyard, a place for barbecues, late-night talks, maybe a hammock nap or two. But it turned into something bigger. It became a crash course in knowing your rights, setting boundaries, and learning that community doesn't mean surrendering your individuality. There's a difference between being a good neighbor and being a doormat. And if someone can't tell the difference, it's not your job to teach them, it's your job to remind them where your property begins. I won't pretend I came out of this unchanged. I'm a little more cautious now. I read every HOA email twice. I keep copies of everything, just in case. But I'm also stronger, calmer, and a lot more confident in saying no when it matters. Because once you've had to fight for your peace, you learn to guard it like gold. And maybe that's what this story is really about. Not revenge. Not winning. It's about learning that you can't control what others do, but you can control how you respond, how you protect what's yours, and how you rise when people try to push you down. In the end, power doesn't belong to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the one who stands their ground and doesn't flinch. So here's my final thought, the line I wish I'd understood sooner. If you let power go unchecked, even paradise turns into a playground for bullies. And sometimes, the only way to save your slice of paradise is to draw the line and make sure no one crosses it again. Now, when I sit in my backyard, I don't just see a fence and a lawn. I see proof that standing up for yourself is always worth it, even if it takes time, patience, and a few legal documents to get there. Because peace isn't something you're given. It's something you protect. And trust me, once you win it back, you never let it go again.